Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. Welcome back to part 2 of the Toyota 4Runner clutch set replacement. Today we're going to be putting everything back together, so let's get started. So this is what you get with a clutch set. I bought this one off eBay. It was just a little bit more than $100. Got a brand new flywheel, the clutch disc, got a brand new pressure plate, got a brand new throwout bearing, got a clutch alignment tool, very important. You can't install a clutch without this. And then a new pilot bearing as well. The one thing you don't get is a rear main seal and the gaskets for the rear main seal housing. So I had to buy these separate. It's important to change these every time you do a clutch because you don't want it to leak if you didn't change it. It's a bad policy if you don't change it. So we just got to take off this one bolt right here, then we can take this spacer plate off. So there are a couple of different ways to get an old pilot bearing out. You can go out and rent a pilot bearing puller tool. You can try stuffing grease and paper into the cavity and then getting a bolt, and then a bolt that's just the right diameter of the opening, no smaller, no bigger, one that fits just perfectly, and then hit it with a hammer, and that compressive force will actually push the bearing out from within. Instead of using grease and paper, another thing you can actually do is you can use white bread and just shove white bread in there. It's a little bit cleaner of a method. Works just the same. Okay, let's give it a try. Basically, you just kind of keep adding more and more as you compress it in there. So it is working. Just basically need to keep putting more and more pieces of bread in there as the cavity gets bigger, as the bearing pops outward. You can see we're starting to come out. Almost there. And we're out. So then what I'll do is I'll just clean the area out with some solvent and just take some light, 600 grit sandpaper, just make sure the surface is completely smooth in there, and then pop the new bearing in. I'm going to remove the rear main seal housing. There are 5 bolts all around it, and then 2 bolts that go up from the oil pan. This old gasket's in pieces. I have to get it out of here as best we can. So I've just got the housing supported on some sockets here. I'm gonna bang the old seal out. So there we go, old seal. Clean off the inner surface here a little bit. Now we're just gonna put our new seal in. When you're pounding your new seal in, do it from behind like this. That way you get even support along the seal itself. You can go ahead and leave your seal slightly proud of the surface if you want to. That way it'll be sticking just a millimeter forward and it won't be riding in that same exact groove that the old one wore into the end of the crankshaft. You want to put a layer of RTV along the bottom of the housing as well as a couple of dots all around. That will just hold the gasket in place so that it doesn't slip off as you're putting this on. And you just go ahead and slip it on. And now we'll just install our pilot bearing. And then a 22 millimeter impact socket makes a perfect driving tool for me. Now we'll put our spacer plate back on. When torquing these bolts up, I've put one bolt in here in order to have something to brace the flywheel against so it doesn't move. You want to go ahead and torque these to 88 Newton meters, which is 65 foot-pounds. Remember to wipe off your flywheel with carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner. Your clutch plate actually goes with the large end sticking out. So you want to go ahead and wipe off the inner surface of your pressure plate with Carb Clean or Brake Clean as well. And go ahead and put it on. Make sure you get it aligned properly. Now you want to get all your bolts started, but you still want to have the pressure plate loose such that you can actually move the clutch disc around with the clutch alignment tool. And you want to go ahead and get that as centered as possible, because you just want to have the alignment be perfect so that you can actually, you'll be able to slip the transmission in there. If you don't get it aligned correctly, you're never getting the transmission in. And you might find that you'll need to hold it there while you put the first bolt in. You want to make sure to torque these to 15 foot-pounds. And then double check all of them, because the torques change as you keep tightening the bolts. Now we'll double check that our clutch alignment tool slips in there nice and easy and that we're aligned. Check this out, guys. I understand the desire to maybe put a light amount of grease on the splines and then a light amount of grease where the throwout bearing will go, but what is with all this grease on the inside of this bell housing? I mean, look at this. It's just caked and caked and caked with grease. I mean, how did someone even get all this grease in here? You know, where were they adding it from? It's just amazing. I mean, some people are just special, you know? Okay, we're gonna get the old throwout bearing out of here. Basically, it's these little springs are holding it onto the clutch release fork. Yeah, I'll just put a dab of lithium grease on the inside there just to make sure that doesn't squeak. So the only reason that you actually want to grease the inside of the throwout bearing here, it has nothing to do with spinning, because the throwout bearing doesn't spin that way. It's just the inner part that actually spins. The throwout bearing stays in place, but it does move back and forth. So you just want like a little bit of grease there just to make sure it doesn't seize up or anything, depending on the type of climate you have. I'm just using a little bit of lithium grease. Just get it lubed up there. I'm also going to put lithium grease on the splines. That's to prevent the clutch disc from getting seized onto the splines. Sometimes clutch sets will come with grease. This one did not. I also put a little bit of lithium grease there. You want a little bit of grease anywhere there's going to be metal-to-metal contact. There we go. So I've managed to get the transmission slipped up on to the engine, and I will admit the first time I tried to do this, it didn't quite go on, so I lowered it back down and then I redid the clutch alignment with the alignment tool, and then the second time it just kind of slipped right into place. So now I'm going to put all the bolts in and tighten them down. So we've got a 17 millimeter up here. We've got 1, 2, 3 14 millimeters along the bottom. We also have another 14 millimeter that comes in from the front. This is over here on the left driver's side, and a 17 millimeter that goes in from the rear. You also have these top two 17 millimeter bolts, which are easiest to get at from inside the car through the shifter cutout. If you remove the front sway bar, you'll have to reconnect it by putting the 14 millimeter bolt in here and on the other side. Then you can bolt the sway bar up to the body using the 12 millimeter bolts on either side. You'll have to reconnect the electrical connectors on the side of the transmission here and here, as well as reconnect the speedometer cable. This one's still broken. I'll have to replace it at another time. Now you can put the starter back in. There's one bolt down there, and then there's a nut up in the back. Next, I put the shift levers back in. That way it'll be easier to install the front drive shaft. We can shift into first and low 4. Next, we can install the front drive shaft with 4 bolts at the transfer case and 4 bolts at the front differential. You'll find it easier to bolt this lower subframe to the transmission mount than bolt the subframe itself to the body of the car. And of course, you've got the 4 bolts up through here, and then the 4 bolts on either side holding the frame to the car. Something I should have done a lot earlier in this process is bolt the clutch slave cylinder back up, because the bracket on the line actually shares the lower starter bolt. Then you can put the little access panel back on with the 4 bolts. Then you can put this front drive shaft dust cover back on. Then you can reinstall this transfer case skid shield, 2 bolts. Then you can put the rear drive shaft in with 4 bolts there and 4 bolts back here. Now we've just installed the inner boot, 2 bolts here, 2 on that side. And we just finished up by installing the rest of the trim. So we actually have no clutch pedal right now, so I'm gonna try to gravity bleed the clutch. Just crack it free. Actually, I'm gonna go up in the car and pump it a little bit. Now I'm gonna get back in the car and test the clutch out. Wow. Extremely soft pedal. There's like no resistance. So it looks like I need to replace the clutch slave cylinder. And as you can see, I've got a little fuel line cutoff tool on the rubber part of the line. This is gonna prevent it from leaking out when I take it off. You can see that the line is connected to the back of the slave right here. It's a 10mm nut, and I'm using a flare nut wrench to get that off. It's angled at just the right angle that I need. So there's the old cylinder. Strange that it wasn't working. So here I got a new one. It was about 13 bucks at Napa. Okay, there we go. Our new slave cylinder is installed. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did before. I'm gonna crack the bleeder, and I'm gonna go and pump the clutch pedal a few times until I see fluid drip out of there. Then I'll tighten the bleeder and we should have our pedal back. Okay, no more air coming out. Now we can put our little cap back on. There we go. Now we have a clutch pedal. So we'll come here and top her off with .3. Okay, let's give it a try. Release the clutch. Yeah, no noise or anything. Feels good. Let me shift into first here. We're good. Let's go to second. Yeah, feels real good. The clutch engages right away. Let me shut this off. Yeah, it feels great. The clutch engages right away. It doesn't take long time to engage like it was before. I'd say job well done. So that's it, guys. We're all done. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you want to. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.